Warning. This podcast is about to open the sealed section of spirituality.
Hey you, yeah you, we see you, you divine human being.
And we are calling you to come home.
We are ready to talk about the real shit. We're going to get real about life as a divine human being.
The good, the not so great, spirituality and taboo. Divinely Human is the podcast that's all about what it means to be human in a spiritual context.
We know it's not just about being spiritual, it's about being human too.
And that means changing poopy nappies and channeling angels.
Sometimes even at the same time. It's time for us to stop making other people's noise our own soundtrack of life.
Let's make some waves together so that we can all ride them together and create deep resonance, a sense of home in this crazy world.
Pour yourself a coffee
Or a glass of wine if that's your potion.
and sit down with your new favorite spiritual sisters
As we go on a journey together into what it means to be
a divine human being.
on this spiritual journey.
Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the Divinely Human podcast. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Tanita.
We're excited to be here today. We're very excited.
Very excited.
It's all going on. It's all going on energetically. So I don't know if you've picked up, but I'm feeling like a little bit like all over the place.
No, not at all.
It's going on at the moment, and we wanted to bring you just a bit of clarification, really, and a bit of another lens, another edge to the ongoing shape of astrology and Mercury Retrograde and Pluto Retrograde and what the fuck that even means. Because there are going to be people listening to this that are like, what the hell? I keep hearing about this everywhere, you know, every time it happens, but like, what does it actually mean? And I feel you, because I've been there, and I've also wondered at some points, what the fuck's happening and what the fuck does this mean? So we are here today to shed some light and shed some of our secret sauce, as Tanita was talking about earlier. We have a secret sauce that we share.
Every episode.
Every episode, and we are here to share some of our secret sauce about this. So
I think that should be the title of this episode, Secret Source of Mercury and Pluto and Retrograde.
absolutely, retrograde secret sauce.
Yes,
That would
I
be
love
a
that.
great title.
And this actually officially kicks off our series on astrology. So we queried the community just a couple of days ago. We had this idea that, you know, we love sharing esoteric knowledge. We love sharing what we've learned. And we noticed that so many of you just soak up those episodes. They get way more downloads. And so we want to give back to you. We want to share as much as we possibly can. And we thought it'd be a really fun way to take you on a series, take you on a little knowledge series. So this officially kicks off the new astrology series. We'll be kind of diving into a few different topics, but today, we want to give you some of the lowdown on the retrograde, because I remember that point in my journey where I would see it everywhere and I would just ignore it. And the reason why I ignored it was because I felt like I couldn't understand it or couldn't grasp it. So if you're feeling like you're seeing this everywhere and you probably feel like you should know more about it just because you are astrologically curious, hopefully today we can give you some really simplified understanding of what a retrograde actually is and how you can implement it into your life, because I think this is coming from a very fiery spirit. There's no point learning about something if I can't actually implement it into my life. So I hope we can do that for you guys today.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I would just like to report quickly that up until about 5 years ago, I genuinely thought retrograde was like the planet literally reverses. It's like, oh, driving
Beep,
along,
beep.
and then it's like, oh, fuck, reverse, beep, beep, beep. And I was just like, and then I got into astrology and I'm like, oh, it actually doesn't?
Yeah. It is confusing because it goes against all of the knowledge we've been taught in schools that the planets move in one direction, right? And so when you hear about it going in retrograde, you think, okay, well, nothing really clicks there. So yeah, even though we call it
lied to me?
retrograde, yes, literally. Even though we call it retrograde, it's just from our perspective here on Earth. It seems as though it's moving backwards, but it actually isn't.
Yeah, an optical illusion. It is absolutely an optical illusion caused by, I guess, the relative positions of that planet and Earth at that point, right? So we are not physically, like, Mercury isn't physically like, okay, back it up, back it up, back it up. It's just, it looks like it is actually traveling in reverse from our POV, which still affects us energetically, rightly so. So I feel like that's a really great starting point.
Yeah, definitely. And it is important to understand this because there has been so many records of people, astrologers in particular, noticing what happens in culture when planets are in retrograde. So when you see astrologers posting about, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, don't sign any contracts or watch out for your technology going funny. This is because there's data being collected for many, many thousands of years that states when this planet is usually in retrograde, this is what happens in the society. And we can kind of see different themes and associate different changes within society with these planetary changes too. So astrology, I want to remind everybody, is kind of like a social science because you are noticing what's happening in the sky as above, so below, and how it relates to us. And because the planet does look like it's moving backwards, that is a shift in our cosmos from our perspective. And in astrology, we do believe as above, so below, the sky does influence us and vice versa. Like there is this such a deep connection with the cosmos here on Earth. So it's really fascinating. And once you kind of understand it from that perspective, I think it's really cool to see how it can relate to you as an individual, because of course it relates to society as a whole.
Absolutely. That was just like listening to like Milk and Honey. Hearing you explain that. I'm like, nothing to add.
Approved. It's got the leash stamp of approval.
my Mercury in Virgo is like frothing at the mouth right now because that was just such a beautiful
thank you
way to describe astrology in its oneness and its wholeness. It reflects our experience, and what we look up and see, we see reflected around us and within us. I guess within us first and then around us, because what we take note of and what we see occurring within, we kind of project outwards and create anyway. I love that so much. Yeah. Let's start with Mercury.
Okay, yes. Kick it off.
It was Friday. Was it the 21st? What date was Friday? I knew that it was Friday. It was last Friday. It'll be 1 week later when people are listening to this, but was that the 21st?
21st, yeah.
Yeah, 21st. It stationed retrograde. And it happens 3 to 4 times a year. So we see this approaching often. And we only really hear about the shitstorms that it kind of causes people. As you said, like, people take data on this. You see lots of like communication breakdowns, but it's Mercury, right? And I'd love to hear your perspective on Mercury, because it is actually one of my favorite planets.
Makes sense.
I love it. I love it. I think that it holds so much potential for expansion and also like intellectual growth as well. I think that it's beautiful, and I like my perspective of it and how I experience Mercury retrograde isn't so much like my whole life gets turned upside down communication wise, but it's more or less like I always find it to be like a major throat activation for me with like my communication in my like with other humans. Like, yes, technology has been a fucking whirlwind. But for me, that's just like, whatever, like I'll deal with it. For me, I always find that it is the like face-to-face and the like human interaction that I find the most substantial expansion in during Mercury retrograde, because I see it break down every single structure within my relationships with other people and how I communicate with the community and obviously other people in my life. So I always find I come out of it like, holy shit, I feel like I've done a spring clean communication wise, and it's really hard, and I always come out better for it, but it is quite difficult. I'd love to hear your perspective on it and how you've found it to a sort of, obviously it depends on where it's hitting you, right? In your houses.
Yeah.
You just turn on transits, right? And you'll be able to see where Mercury is hitting you. But I'm interested to see your point of view and how you travel and navigate through it.
I love Mercury too. I'm the same as you. I have a really soft spot. My Sun and my Mercury are very closely conjunct, so I do understand like that love and just like affection for the planet Mercury, but I kind of see it as this planet that really influences our way of communication, but also our intelligence and thought process and the way that we kind of plan things out. It kind of rules the mind, but I do see it connecting both the crown chakra and the throat chakra. I not only see it as a channel of communication within this realm, but actually also other realms. And I know not every astrologer holds that point of view and that belief, but that's mine personally. And I was born with Mercury in retrograde. So if you ever want to pull up your chart on astro.com, and if you ever see a planet with a little R next to it in your natal chart, that means it was actually in or was stationed retrograde when you were born. And you will find that for some people who were born with the planet Mercury in retrograde, actually retrogrades are a really great time for us because we're noticing and we're kind of at home with this direction of the planet, and it feels a lot calmer for me. So I don't mind Mercury in retrograde. I actually find that I have more technology issues when it's stationed direct because I'm a very fiery person and I don't have a lot of patience. But when it comes to Mercury in retrograde, I actually feel a lot calmer, and I find it's a really great time for me personally to reflect and plan. It's a lot of the time where I do my journaling and meditation and reflection and really just get very curious about the ways in which I've been communicating, not only with myself, but other people and spirit, and whether or not that served me. I think this period is such a good period for reflection, and I always think about it as if you were writing a story, like literally writing a novel. You have to take that time to plan, otherwise the story's going to wander in all different directions, and it might make sense to you, but having that reflection period to edit and kind of transform it a little bit and like move things around helps things flow a lot smoother for when you are going to begin the writing process or re-begin the writing process. And that's kind of how I see Mercury in retrograde and then how it stations direct. I don't know, how do you utilize Mercury in retrograde?
I use it almost like changing tack, like reviewing progresses, like my personal progress and my personal journey as well. I like to look at Mercury like this little admin of the cosmos. Like it's there with like the notepad and the laptop and everything, and it's like, okay, so she's doing this, okay, right. That's, for me personally, that's what my relationship with Mercury is like. And of course, like being a Virgo as well, it's definitely going to reflect somewhat of that. Mm-hmm. But it's a reminder also for me to really slow down before I react. And I'm very reactive. I tend to like jump the gun quite a bit when it comes to things. Someone's like, okay, go. I'm like, I'm going already. Like,
you are already in the dust.
That was yesterday. Like, what are you talking about? So I find it's really good. It's like a bit of a slap in the face. It's like, calm the fuck down, girl. Like, just wait and see. Like, so for me, I really experience that too. It's like, I get like 3 or 4 times a year where I'm actually really conscious of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, how I'm reacting. And I find that I'm like, it's really crazy because we were speaking about this yesterday. Because you and I were speaking about like where it's hitting in our chart, and for me, it's hitting my 7th house of like close relationships, like personal relationships.
No, 5th house, mine's 7th house, isn't it?
Oh, wait.
No.
Yes. Mine's 7th.
No, mine's 7th.
Wait.
No, mine's 5th. No, sorry, I apologize.
I was like, oh,
I was seeing your chart and I mixed it up with mine in my mind. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I love that. I love that they're like one chart now.
They literally are. I can see them in my mind's eye. They're all intermingled. That's hilarious.
Is it?
What?
Now you've got me doubting myself.
No, it is the 7th house. No, don't doubt yourself.
Oh my God. Anyway, I'm just going to talk as if it is the 7th. Yeah. But we were speaking yesterday, like I messaged you and I was like, girl, it's hitting my 7th. I'm already like balls deep in an argument with my partner over something. And I was like, but I can genuinely see where it's my fault. And I don't like to see that. I fucking hate to see that. But I find that this happens a lot during Mercury retrograde. It's like you can see the breakdown in the communication and where it's probably your fault, where you actually have to grow, not necessarily where someone else has to grow and pick up the slack. And it's really confronting for me. But that's also something I've seen come up a lot during retrogrades, depending on like where it's hitting. It's reflection for me and not so much me projecting out to everyone else what their issue is. And it's very, very confronting.
And I think that is where a lot of the fear comes from, right? Because it's like this magnifying glass over everything that we're kind of doing. But that's such a good way of explaining it, right? It is such a deep reflection on us and not necessarily the other people. And I've got it mixed up because mine's in the 5th house. So there is that essence of like romance and things like that as well. So we are kind of feeling both of those together, which is really funny. Yeah. But it's really easy to look up. If you go to astro.com, turn on transits, like Leisha was saying at the beginning, you'll actually be able to see, it's usually in green and on the outer ring of your natal chart, you'll be able to see where it's hitting you, because Mercury it transits very differently for each of us, right? So it's funny because, if you can understand which house it is in, a lot of the time that is kind of the theme that will be coming up for you as well. So it's a really good place to start looking at your chart and understanding where maybe your natal Mercury is and then where transit Mercury is, and just starting to understand, okay, where is this coming into my life right now? Because I also see it as a really great opportunity from the universe to like hone in and be intentional and conscious about this area of your life. And I think a lot of the fear with Mercury in retrograde comes when people aren't really aware of that. They're not listening to the lessons that are coming through or different things that their guides want to open them up to. And so it almost feels like this really harsh energy that's coming from left field. So if you can sit with this and understand how to work with it, it can make the whole process flow a lot smoother. And that's definitely what I found when working with these transits. But I also want to make a note and say, like, I don't believe that astrology should take us out of our life. I think it's so important to continue to live as you are and just be aware of these transits. And if you're somebody who's new to all of this, just seeing what happens. And if you are more conscious and if there's any work you can do, I don't think you should stop living your life because a transit is happening. I think you should continue to listen to your intuition just as you would, if you didn't know about this. I think that's really important because,
Yes. And I was trying to express this the other day as well. I think I put up a post too, and I was like, if you need to sign a fucking document, you need to sign a fucking document. Like, you can't be like, oh, I'm sorry, bank. It's Mercury retrograde. I'm going to have to postpone, like, this signing of my home loan until, like, Mercury. Like, no.
Please don't do that.
No. And I was actually really inspired because I saw another post about, they were speaking about how astrology is not fatalism. And I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's just, it is
Yes.
not. It's like, people, like, there are some really cutthroat astrologers out there that are like, don't do this, don't do that, don't manifest during eclipse season, don't write any intentions during like eclipse season, don't do anything during Mercury retrograde, expect your whole life to go up in flames in Pluto retrograde. Like, just, and then everyone's just like, holy fuck, I gotta get out of here, I gotta do. And I'm like, no, because do you know what? Who is guiding you more than anything else in the world, more than any planet or star or constellation or anything? It is you. It is you, and you know best. You know what's best for you. So that's a really great point. I really think that we can take on advice, but we need to be able to distinguish reality from something that is just really unrealistic that we cannot base our human lives around. And I'm just going to say, yeah, if you need to do something during retrograde that doesn't necessarily align with what people, certain astrologers or people are saying not to do, if you feel like it's the right thing for you, it's going to be the right thing for you, because you know what's best for you. No one else can tell you that. No one else can tell you, what decisions you should be making. And it's almost like, I remember speaking about this when we did our episode on like the fortune teller is dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you take someone else's advice, you're going on like their timeline and what they think is best for you, and that's not necessarily coming from your higher self. So I think it's really important to sort of anchor into that and like, I don't know, like let that be the helm of where you're going, instead of allowing it to sort of take you for the ride. Like, you're taking it for the ride.
Yes, 100%. Like, I can't remember what I was writing, but I was reminding everybody we are fucking sorceresses. Like, we have the ability to wield energy and alchemize energy, and understanding what's at the core of these planetary transits, we can help utilize that in our life, not the other way around. It's such a great mindset shift for all of us to be reminded that, we are in control of our own life, and the planets do influence it to some capacity, but you actually have that ability to alchemize it in any way that you wish and intend to. I think that's really, really important to remind everybody as well. And look, technology usually does fuck up during a Mercury in retrograde, and things do usually go a little bit skew-iff, but I don't think that's any rhyme or reason to stop living your life and stop recording podcasts, stop calling people, like stop going out and venturing out into the world. It just means that, like, maybe we have to account a little bit of extra time to make sure that all of our tech is working, right? Like, there are ways to work with the energy. I think there's more beauty than, not beauty. I can't think of the opposite.
Yeah. There's more, I totally get what you're saying. It's like there's more good than like inconvenience during this time, if you choose to view it that way and if you know how to work with it. But I think like the main way to work with transits is to know that they're not actually here to hinder us. They're here to help us and to guide us and to, instigate that growth within us. It's not like this happens and it's like, fuck off, like, fuck you. We're the cosmos and we fucking hate you humans. Like, no. It's like, that's just not it. Like, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like, every single transit holds such a gift. And if you choose to see it as a hindrance, it's going to be a hindrance, right? Like, you're going to create that. You're going to create that exact narrative, and you're going to play that out in your life if you're going to view it like that. Whereas if you come into it, and I've just learned this with Mercury retrograde, like, as I was saying before, I'm like, no, it is a good time to reflect on myself. It's not always someone else's faults. It's sometimes mine.
Sometimes I'm the drama.
Sometimes I am the problem. I'm hating to say this right now, but it's the truth. It's the truth. And I think that it's a really healthy and expansive way to approach the retrogrades. And and we've got Pluto turning retrograde on the 1st of May. But we move through this once a year, and I just want to point out, like, just something that I've noticed that I really love about being in the southern hemisphere and this happening is that, like, roughly every time Pluto goes retrograde for like the 5 or 6 months that it stays retrograde, it's such a long transit, but it usually aligns with our like winter months, which I find really, really beautiful, because it's that like introverted, introspective, like inner power struggles that kind of come up during that time. Like Pluto is like control, power, like transformational energy, shifting of like the tides. And I feel that during the winter time, that is when I'm most introspective. That is when I'm doing like all of the growth under the soil, so that during the springtime we can rise and we can sort of step into that higher self. So I just wanted to point that out, that I'm really grateful that I'm in the southern hemisphere, because I think it's a really beautiful pattern that we get to move through, and a really beautiful coincidence with the Pluto retrograde that we go through every year. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Where is Pluto going in retrograde? What zodiac sign? Do you know off the top of your head?
It'll be Aquarius.
No. Yeah,
oh,
that's
no, wait,
really...
No, because it moved into Aquarius, and then it doesn't retrograde back into the previous sign for a little while, and then it will go back into Aquarius at later. Because I knew that it was like such a big thing that it moved into Aquarius, but I was like, guys, it's going to be heading the fuck out of there soon.
Back into Cap.
Was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Back into Capricorn, and then June 11th returning. Yeah, back into Capricorn June 11th, and then returning to Aquarius 20th of January 2024.
Yeah.
May, June. Yeah.
It's like popping in and out.
Yeah,
and then it stays there for quite a while, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure it stays there for like
a long time. A long
ass time.
I think Pluto gets such a bad rap, though. I know. But a lot of like traditional astrologers, especially, I mean, like you were saying, those cutthroat astrologers, Pluto is like doom and gloom and sometimes just completely disregarded. Yeah. I love Pluto. I think Pluto is so deeply connected to like the energy of Lilith. When we talked about that episode, I really associate Pluto with this dark, untamed part of ourselves that, you know, has been pushed down or pushed to the side, and that needs love and needs affection and needs unconditional love. And I agree with you. I love that Pluto retrograde happens in those darker kind of months of our year, because it is so introspective. And for me, it's just such a great time to tap into those parts of myself that maybe I had been neglecting, the quieter parts of myself. I always find that in the more lighter seasons, I'm definitely all go, go, go. And sometimes I find it really, really hard to stop and slow down. I can be very out of touch with like what's happening in my body or in my heart. And so when Pluto does go retrograde, I find it's a really great time for me to reassess who I actually am. And it's really funny because I was reflecting on this the other day, but for a lot of my childhood, when Pluto went into retrograde, just a little bit after, we would actually move. So every 5 or 6 years of my childhood, I would actually move town. And it was always when Pluto went into retrograde, just a couple of about a month after. So I found that fascinating too, because Pluto is in my first house. The retrograde will not always be associated with that. But for me, Pluto is a part of my identity. And so moving towns and shifting and having to go to a new school really impacted who I thought I was in a new environment. And I thought that was really fascinating. And that's why I love learning about not only natal planets, but transits. And over time, you can start to reflect and see those patterns and occurrences. What about you?
Yeah. I think that is really important. I think that it's really important to know. And I want to just just say that I really loved what you said about how for you, how you feel about Pluto and like how you see it is like that Lilith energy. And then I just had this come through just then. I was like, when we think about it, like Pluto has been denied its whole time. This, like the whole time we've known about Pluto, people are like, that's not a planet. That's too small to be a planet. It's too far out. It's not this, it's not that. And it's like that, it's been treated like that. And I love that because it really shows us what we do deny about ourselves. Mine's in Scorpio. Ooh. So I feel it.
Okay.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, I have made the observation that during, and I think this is why I fucking love winter and like the start of like the spring, I just always feel during Pluto retrograde, I feel so like connected to myself, to my rituals, more so than I do in like the summer months or the warmer months here. And I think that for me, retrograde, like having like my Pluto in Scorpio and then having it go retrograde too and transit, haven't checked where it's actually moving through for me.
Me either.
But just with that correlation there, I find that I'm so much more connected to myself and like my rituals and like my, I don't know, like
alchemy. Your alchemy.
Yeah, like I just fucking vibe with myself during that time. And I just give myself so much more time and love and patience and understanding and make the time for ritual and like deep ritual during those months. So I always love it. But I always come out of it having worked through a lot of internal shit because of that. And I'm like, welcome to the new Alicia, guys. It's like every year. It's like Scorpio. It's like that snake shedding its skin every year. So I'm like, oh God, what's going to go down this year?
Who am I going to become? Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I mean, not to be dramatic at all, but yeah, definitely Pluto retrograde to me is like burning it all to the ground and restarting again. I feel that to my core sometimes because it is often associated with destruction and fear. A lot of the time astrologers say that Pluto rules our fear. I don't really like to view it that way, but it can be helpful when this retrograde enters because it can sometimes help us see maybe what we've been ignoring, and a lot of the time that is our fears or things that we don't really want to deal with. It can bring all of that stuff up, but I think Pluto is really influential to those parts of ourselves that we have been pushing to the side and kind of ignoring for the previous months. And we have a lot of opportunities that may arise that allow us to reconnect with those parts of ourselves. And they can be nice things and not so nice occurrences. And it just all depends. But I don't think it's a time to be afraid or fearful. I think it's, again, I'm really of the belief that it's a beautiful time to reconnect. And I never want to say that a transit is bad because I really, truly don't believe that. But you may see a lot of astrologers saying, be very wary and very careful during that time.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's so fucking hard because, like, it's in retrograde for, like, 5 months of the year. So, like, what are you supposed to do, you know? Like, that's insane to me. I'm like, you gotta live your life, girl.
Yes, I totally agree.
It's so hard. It's like learning to work with it. And I guess I love, I guess, looking at Pluto retrograde as like the sowing of seeds. So like Pluto retrograde is like the cultivation under the soil so that your seeds can germinate so that they can grow through, they can like form strong roots because you've worked through that, like, you know, like what strong foundations you need to bring into your life, what sort of structure you need in your life to be able to sustain and hold those roots to sort of like grow up and transform and expand and bring more in to sort of add to who you are and what you need and really fulfill your desires. So I love to look at it that way. And it is a gift. Again, it's a gift. Like, to be able to move through that, to have the opportunity to move through that is a gift unto itself. And I think the more that we start looking at transits this way, instead of like creating this fear that people, it's so much clickbaity fear around like the retrogrades that I see like spread across social media mostly. And I'm like, no, it's a gift. Like, it's hard. It's hard. I'm not going to deny it's hard, but it is a gift, and it just gives so much. Like, it honestly, it gives. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think it is a gift, and when you are working with it, whatever that looks like for you, it can be so supportive, because exactly like you said, you are planting those little seeds. And I always see it as doing the inner work before kind of blossoming, and I find very in tune with the seasons. So doing that inner work in the quieter months and then starting to ramp up and kind of open up and come out to the world is something that naturally occurs for me, and I've noticed that. But now consciously working with this, I do a lot of my inner work and shadow work and subconscious work during Pluto retrograde, because I find that it's so much easier to do it. There's so much support from the universe and from, you know, from the planets, from the stars, to actually do this inner work. There's such a beautiful invitation to do that. And no, it's not always easy. No, we don't like looking at our shit and, you know, re-meeting the parts of us that we've forgotten about, that we pushed to the corner for a reason. But it can and it will be for a greater good, and it can be incredibly supportive for you. So maybe we should give some tips on how to work with this, because I've been talking about how to work with this. I think it would be really good for people to take away some little notes on what you can do to work with both of these retrogrades. What do you reckon?
I love that. I think it's a great idea. I think with Mercury retrograde, definitely this is like my own advice that I've given myself.
This will totally be for us as well.
Mercury retrograde. Think before you speak. Just like take 2 seconds before you open your mouth.
Or for me, my facial expressions have been giving me away lately. It's not very nice. I feel like I have to walk around with a paper bag on my head lately.
Gift yourself a few moments before you react and respond. I'm not saying don't react and respond. I'm saying do it, but just gift yourself a few moments before. And probably another piece of advice for Mercury retrograde would be to just surrender into it. That's for every retrograde though. Surrender into it and just know that there is something in there for you to learn, not for you to project on everyone else to learn. So just take that into account when you're like having, you know, conversations and discussions and doing negotiations with people. Know that it's a lesson for you, not for them. Don't project. And Pluto retrograde, fucking go deep. Honestly, like, just kneel down and just say, Pluto, take me there, take me back. Allow me to dive back into this beautiful Pluto energy, because the more that you surrender into it over the next 5 or 6 months, the more you're going to get out of it and the more you're going to learn. And I just think that it's really important. And also for Pluto retrograde, just be aware that you're going to feel at times like you are kind of like you're not in control, and you're going to want to like gain all your power back and do all of that. Like, go ahead and do that, but just use discernment with the situations that you're in and where you're doing that, and whether, again, that is a self-reflection or a projection.
I love that. And I've actually got something to add that gave me an idea. I feel like during Pluto in retrograde, just be very aware of any shiny gold syndrome that you have from other people who are offering products or services that do give you authority or power or a higher, quicker road. It is a time usually that if we are ignorant to this, we will want to jump on that and spend all our money and pay as much as possible to gain power or speed or authority. So just be aware of any of that, and whether it is truly in alignment with what you want. I would invite you to just sit in reflection for at least, a day. I know that's really hard, but I would seriously invite you to do that, because during that period you can get to understand whether this is just something that you wanted to do because you want to gain more power and authority in this moment, or if it's something that actually aligns to your higher path. So just be aware of that.
Golden shortcuts don't exist. If someone's offering you them, just think about it.
Just think about it. Definitely think about it. And the other thing is, I would invite you to do that inner work. Do some subconscious healing. Dive deep. Learn about your past lives. Like, really connect with those parts of yourself that don't necessarily exist in the material realm. I'm not saying don't look after your body and things. I'm just saying invite yourself into a new practice that allows you to reconnect with the parts of yourself that are, deeper, that 12th house kind of energy. So that's what I would invite you guys to do. And for Mercury, I would say get into a practice of reflection, whatever that looks like for you. For me, it's journaling. I really love journaling, but if that is scheduling a weekly chat with your girlfriend and just talking about all of the shit that's been going on, do that. Like, it doesn't have to be a time where you go through this alone. I would invite you to talk about it with other people as well. We learn so much from one another, and you don't have to keep this to yourself. And also just sit in reflection a lot more. Sit with the silence, sit with the quietness, and get to love that part of yourself that isn't always running 100 miles an hour, because we all have that part of ourselves. So yeah, this was fun to talk about. I really enjoyed this episode.
It was so good. So good.
We love putting our teacher hats on, seriously.
I feel like we shared the perfect amount of sauce.
I agree. We are the secret sauce.
We are the secret sauce.
Oh, you guys, well, let us know what else you want to learn from us, because we want to keep going with the astrology series. But if you know anybody who wants to learn about Mercury in retrograde, Pluto in retrograde, or even just more about astrology, if you're dipping your toes in, please send this along to them. It's always incredibly helpful to learn from not just one perspective, but multiple perspectives, especially with such a broad and deep topic like astrology. We all find it so helpful, and we both have many teachers ourselves. So pass us on. We want to jump in more ears, and we love you guys so much. Don't forget, you can find us on YouTube, Anchor, Spotify.
Not Anchor anymore.
Not Anchor anymore. Spotify for podcasters, iTunes, and I think we'll actually be on Amazon soon, because I saw we got an invitation from them to pop our podcast on there. So we'll be over there as well. But come and chat with us on Instagram. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.